Last night, I was putting this together for you fine people, and this is where things get tricky already. So, I did Anaheim's updated history. Great, fine, fantastic. Now I'm doing Arizona's, and of course, that's under the shadow of the Winnipeg Jets. So, the question I asked myself was okay, Shannon, are we going to separate them out? Are we going to do just Arizona? Are we going to do Winnipeg Jets later? Are we going to do both together like we did last time? At that point, I realized I'm referring to myself as if I'm Venom. It's weird. Um, so the decision I came to was that I'll look at both together because since this team came into the league in 1979, they've been riddled with problems. They had a couple of good seasons in Winnipeg, but in general they were a middling franchise. They have had a couple of good seasons in Arizona, but they've been a middling franchise, and people complain and you got to move them, you got to move them, you got to move them. It's been a badly managed franchise. Moving them isn't going to help that part of things. Moving them from Winnipeg to Arizona didn't make them a better franchise. And in Winnipeg, there were a lot of poor seasons. It's like I tried to explain to Winnipeg fans when they were talking about their history and getting their history back. You guys are better off building a new history with the Jets you got, and just you can still have the memories of all these guys. Nobody could take any of that from you, like Howard, Chuck, and Steen and all them. But in terms of history, let Arizona have it. It's middling, and I'll go through it. They're all-time scoring leaders. Now, I didn't do like I did with Anaheim, where I did the top 10, because again, it's going to just be a mix of players who played for Phoenix, played for Winnipeg, played for both. So I thought, nah. Your all-time leading scorers, the important ones: Shane Doan, 402 goals, 570 assists, 972 points as your leader for the Coyotes. For the Jets, Dale Hawerchuk, 379 goals, 550 assists, 929 points. It is worth noting that the assists total for Hawerchuk was a little bit below Thomas Steen's, so I could have put Steen up here for assists, but then that just overly clutters. And this board's cluttered enough. So, power play goals, historically, Shane Doan 128, Dale Hawerchuk 122. It is worthy of note. You want to throw an asterisk on it, you can. Shane Doan played about, 500 more games with the franchise than did Dale Hawerchuk to get to those totals. So, Hawerchuk's totals are very, very impressive. Hall of Famer and all that stuff. Shane Doan, there's some debate about whether or not he makes the Hall. We'll see. Doug Smale is the all-time leader in shorthanded goals with 25. I had to get him in there. He was one of my favorite players for the Jets in the 80s. I always wanted to see him on Vancouver, so we'd have Smale and Smeal. And it never happened. Never happened. I don't know who you put in the middle of that line. I don't know what name you put in the middle so that Bob Cole would just lose his mind trying to pronounce the names of the players. He just would have thrown his papers near, said forget this, and walked out halfway through. But anyways, yeah, Doug Smale, 25 shorthanded goals. Forgotten player from the 80s at some point. May end up in the THG Hall of Fame. Wins leaders, Ilya Bryzgalov, 130. Bob Essenza, backup Bob, 129. Mike Smith, 128. Nikolai Habibulin, 126. And Sean Burke, 97. A couple of these guys played for both the Jets and the Coyotes. So, again, they definitely overlap. And if I had tried to do these videos separately, it would have been more of a headache. As much information as there is on the board, to me it's easier to track it just saying, all right, I'm going to treat this as it's one franchise, because it is. When they moved from Winnipeg to Arizona, there wasn't a huge change in a lot of things. The roster stayed pretty much the same. So when the Jets come into the league in 1979, coming out of the WHA, they had some restrictions on who they could and couldn't keep, meaning that a lot of their Avco Cup winning players were no longer members of the Winnipeg Jets. And it hurt them. They were the lowest rated of the four WHA teams in their first year, and it would take them years to recover. 1982, they make their first playoff appearance, so that's in year 3. 1985, they make their first trip to the second round. They never get past the second round as the Winnipeg Jets. It doesn't happen. 84-85 is also their first year above 500. So this was a team that lost often and very often poorly. 84-85 is their first year above 500. So it is some tough times for the Winnipeg Jets, and they don't really get a whole lot better. And I know Jets fans point out that there was the 1 year that the Jets were considered the toughest team for the Oilers to eliminate in the playoffs that year. They still got eliminated, and there was no big proud moment for the franchise. And they were last in the division 5 times. So this was a division that stunk. This was the Smythe with Vancouver and LA, and they would manage to finish worse. And one of those seasons, they were like, I think, 1 point ahead of the Colorado Rockies out of last place in the league. So, Winnipeg had some problems, definitely. Solani, 76 goal, 130 point season, kind of makes all that go away on some level. When Solani comes in and you got Alexei Zhamnov coming in as well for the Winnipeg Jets at that point, there's a lot of excitement around Winnipeg. That excitement gets kind of squashed when the Canadian dollar gets squashed as well, and suddenly there's talks of moving the team and losing money. But we'll get to that. Now, when we look at coaching wins, Dave Tippett leads the way for this franchise with 282. Bobby Francis, 165. Wayne Gretzky, 143. John Paddock, 106. Dan Maloney with 91. This is a team that's gone through 17 coaches in 40 seasons. 17. Your average coach lasts about 2.5 years, and then you're out. That's a pretty good run. There have been a lot of coaches that have lasted less time than that. It's frustrating because it makes it hard to build an identity when you keep switching out coaches. Now, the good news for Arizona currently, as I'm recording this, they appear to be establishing an identity as a tough team to play against, very strong defensively, though offensively challenged. If they can get the offensive side of things figured out, there's a good chance that the Coyotes find themselves back in the postseason soon. Team captains, this is a long list, and I had some concerns when I started doing this, whether or not it would actually fit on the board, whether or not it would actually fit the whole way. Lars Erik Sjoberg, 79-80, their first year, he's the captain. Morris Lukowicz becomes captain in 80-81. Dave Christian, 81-82 and 82-83. Lucien Deblois also had captain's duties that year, 82-83 and 83-84. Also in 83-84, Randy Carlyle has 5 games as captain and he gets traded. So they're going through a lot of players. Dale Hawerchuk, captain's duties from 84 to 90. Mario Marois shared that with him in 85-86. Thomas Steen and Randy Carlyle both had captain's duties in 89 through 91. Troy Murray, 91 through 93. 92 through 94, that's Dean Kennedy's job. Keith Tkachuk, 93 through 95. And 96 through 2001. Yeah, it's a lot of captains. Chris King, 95-96, so for their last year in Winnipeg. Teppo Numminen, 2001 through 2003. Shane Doan. Thank you, Shane Doan. Thank you for making sure this will fit on the board by being captain from 2003 till 2017. And of course, this past season, Oliver Ekman-Larsson takes over as captain. Should be captain for a while to come. But they've had a lot of captains. That's a ton. So again, when you're trying to build a team identity, if your coaching and captaining are changing a lot, you're not building an identity. And that's been part of the problem with the Arizona Coyotes. And you could counter that by saying, well, they haven't been very good. Right. But it also shows that management has struggled to figure out the right formula to turn things around. Top 10 draft picks. So I did this with Anaheim. I'm going to do it again here. Dave Babbitt drafted number 2 by the Winnipeg Jets in 1980. The red ones are the Winnipeg Jets draft picks. The green ones are Arizona/Phoenix Coyotes. Dale Hawerchuk, the number 1 draft pick in 1981. So the only time this franchise has ever picked number 1 overall, they get a Hall of Famer in Dale Hawerchuk. 1983, Andrew McBain goes at the number 8 spot. 1986, Pat Ellenuk goes at the number 8 spot as well. 1988, they draft 10th overall, and there's Teemu Selanne. So their best top 10 pick, actually at number 10. And again, he had the 76 goal season. It was great. And then he ends up being moved out, which is part of how this happens. 1989, Stu Barnes is drafted 4th overall. 1991, Aaron Ward's drafted 5th overall. In 1995, they draft Shane Doan at the number 7 spot. So this franchise drafts the franchise player for the Coyotes towards the end of their run in Winnipeg. Now, it isn't until 2004 that the Coyotes get their first shot at a top 10 draft pick. They draft Blake Wheeler at number 5, and he refuses to play there. 2006, Peter Mueller's drafted at 8. 2007, they draft Kyle Turris at number 3. 2008, they draft Mikkel Bodker at number 8. 2009, they draft Oliver Ekman-Larsson at number 6. He's been pretty good for them. 2015, they famously or infamously draft Dylan Strome at number 3 and leave Marner on the table. 2016, they draft Clayton Keller at number 7. And 2018, it was Barrett Hayden who's drafted at number 5. And we have yet to see him at the NHL level as I'm recording this. Keller, pretty good player. Had a bit of a down year in his second year. We'll see whether or not he has the comeback in him for year 3. Overall, their drafting record, mixed. It's been mixed. And Solani being forced to flee the Winnipeg Jets for money reasons, well, we see them as the Coyotes in 96-97. So their first year in Phoenix, they did make the playoffs that year, and they finished above 500, so they did what the Jets weren't able to do for a while. However, remember, they're not coming in from another league, and they're not getting their best players stripped away from them either. They only got out of the first round in 2012, and they got to the conference finals, and it was a great run, and people got excited. And since then, there's been 7 years of no playoffs, and many of those times over those 7 years, not even close to the playoffs. 2014-2015, they changed their name to Arizona. At some point, Phoenix doesn't work. They moved to Glendale, and now Glendale doesn't work. Glendale is a problem. And Gary Bettman said it's a problem. Ownership said it's a problem. They got to fix that problem. December of 1995, Jerry Colangelo, who was the owner of the Phoenix Suns, Stephen Gluckstern, and Richard Burke, their Phoenix businessmen, they bought the struggling Winnipeg Jets. As soon as this happens in December of 1995, the Jets were a dead team walking, and fans knew it. So there were all kinds of rallies to save the Jets, and the fans went really all out with trying to save the team. And I felt horrible for them that last night. It gutted me on some level to see it. Even though I wasn't a Jets fan, I was like, that could be the Canucks someday. Because at that point, when the Jets leave, the Nordiques are going to leave. Or no, the Nordiques had already left. The Nordiques left the year before. Keep up, Shannon, keep up. So the Nordiques had left, the Winnipeg Jets had left, and there was some feeling that Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver were all on life support. And that Edmonton was next. Because at the point where all these teams start moving and they asked Gary Bettman, why are these teams moving? What's going on? He said, well, I can sum up the problem in 3 letters, WHA. And the only WHA team that hadn't moved at that point was Edmonton, so that left Oiler fans going, wait, what? What? No. So, yeah. So they changed their name to Arizona years after this. And it's nothing but trouble. And maybe part of it is the team name, because second place in the contest they had to name the team was Scorpions. Arizona Scorpions. Sounds fantastic. The only problem with Arizona Scorpions, you would have had to hear Rock You Like a Hurricane before every single game over the last 20-some years, and I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think even the Scorpions want that, to be honest. So, all kidding aside, this team has been plagued by ownership and money issues ever since. These guys don't last. Nobody lasts as owner of the Coyotes. So, what Mr. Mariuello has taken over is a team that has gone through many, many, many owners. This is why when Houston comes up and, Houston wants a team, everybody goes, give them Arizona. Quebec needs a team. Give them Arizona. Because it's the easy target. So I'm personally hoping that under Mariuello's guidance and with the money that he's got, that maybe we can see some real stability with the team. The number one thing is the building. They've got to figure out a way to either make it work in Glendale at Gila River or just move. There's no way around it. And the preference, the hope is to find some way to make it work in Phoenix or some other spot in Arizona. They've talked about other spots in Arizona. Deals have fallen through. This team really desperately needs some sense of permanence, and again, as I've said before in this video, identity. They have lacked that. Maybe with Tocchet behind the bench, and with some of the moves they're making now, maybe that identity will finally be there. Now, this is where things get really tricky. So the trade history. I had to get really picky with Arizona's trade history to make this fit down here. This is Arizona's. This is Winnipeg's. So the Winnipeg Jets, notable trades. These are notable. These are ones that I wanted to talk about. There are a bunch of others that I could not fit on the board. Can't be done. July 15th of 1981, the Jets acquire Brent Ashton from the Canucks, along with the 1982 fourth-round pick. The Canucks acquire the rights to Ivan Hlinka. The Ivan Hlinka the tournament's named after, who sadly came over to play for the Canucks. Too old of an age, but he was pretty good while he played for Vancouver. December 19th, 1981, the Jets acquire Serge Savard from the Habs in exchange for Montreal getting back a 1982 sixth-round draft pick. Savard coming in to play for Winnipeg, it was nice to see him on the blue line, even though he was physically done at that point. But it was nice to see him play for Winnipeg and give them something on the blue line. March 7th, 1983, the Jets acquire Laurie Boschman. The Oilers acquire Willie Lindstrom. Laurie Boschman, one of my favorite players at that point in time, and he was a pretty strong Winnipeg Jet. And he's easy to forget now because there's a lot of people watching this who go, I don't know who Laurie Boschman is. But yeah, he's a pretty good player. March 5th, 1984, the Jets acquire Randy Carlyle. In exchange for the number 9 pick, going to the Penguins, who became Doug Bodger, and Mo Mantha was future considerations. So Mantha gets thrown in later as future considerations. Carlyle would become a key member of the Jets, but not yet. Not yet. November 21st, 1985, the Jets acquire Ray Neufeld in exchange for the Whalers getting Dave Babich. And this, to me, is a loss. Now, Neufeld had some good seasons here and there, but Babich went on to play for well over a decade after this. So, to me, that's a loss for the Jets. June 13th, 1988, the Jets again acquire Brent Ashton. The Wings acquire Paul McLean. I'll call that a loss. Paul McLean, Brent Ashton, yeah, I would give the edge to the Wings in that one. June 16th, 1990, the Jets acquire Scott Arniel, Phil Housley, Jeff Parker, and a 1990 first-round pick that becomes Keith Tkachuk. In exchange for the Sabres getting Dale Hawerchuk and a 1990 first-round pick that becomes Brad May. So those are two pretty big names as draft picks, but as a player, I'll take Tkachuk over May. No offense to Brad May if he's watching this. So this is a deal that kind of completely changes things for Winnipeg and adds Phil Housley to the blue line, which is important. And Housley plays some forward in Winnipeg as well. Then September 24th, 1993, the Jets acquire Nelson Emerson and Stefan Quintal. The Blues acquire Phil Housley. See, the problem with this is you acquire these big-name players, but you don't really have the money to pay them. So for big-money teams like St. Louis, and St. Louis was spending a lot of money at that point, Housley ends up going to St. Louis. And what you get back in Emerson and Quintal, it's a downgrade. April 7th, 1995, the Jets reinvent the Toronto Maple Leafs. They acquire Mike Eastwood and a 1995 third that becomes Brad Isbister. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquire Ty Domi. And there was a lot of complaining about this trade on the Winnipeg side, or on the Toronto side, I should say, from everybody except Don Cherry. So Ty Domi gets acquired by the Leafs, and the rest is history. Domi becomes a cult favorite for the Toronto Maple Leafs, which still exists to this day, thanks to the Winnipeg Jets trading him there. If he'd stayed in Winnipeg, he probably would have ended up in Arizona, and yeah, his kid ended up in Arizona, but we'll get to his kid. February 7th, 1996, so this is towards the end. This is that last year. This is after the team's already been sold to the Phoenix guys. They acquire Chad Kilger, Oleg Tverdovsky, and a 1996 third-round pick for Teemu Selanne, Mark Schwannard, and a fourth-round pick. And that's the death knell of the Jets. That's why this 92-93 season, as great as this was, it's overshadowed by this trade that preceded the team moving by months. So this was a sign they're not paying, they're not keeping, they're not staying. It's just it was a bad time. Then they moved to Arizona. So in June 22nd, 1996, this is the first trade by the Arizona Coyotes. The Coyotes acquire a 4th round pick from the Leafs in exchange for Mike Gartner. And Gartner, of course, decent little run with the Leafs. August 16th, 1996, the Coyotes acquire Jeremy Roenick. And in exchange, the Hawks get Craig Mills, Alexei Zhamnov, and a 1997 first. So Solani goes, Zhamnov goes within months of each other. And they were the young, promising forwards for the Winnipeg Jets. June 26, 1999, the Travis Green is traded to the Coyotes with a first-round pick in 1999, and the Ducks acquire Oleg Tverdovsky back. So that's an interesting one in that Travis Green, now coach of the Canucks, is on the trade board there. March 13th, 2001, the Coyotes acquire Michael Handzus, Ladislav Nagy, and Jeff Tafe. 2002 first-round pick that would become Ben Eager. The Blues acquire Keith Tkachuk. This is one of those deals where you acquire pieces, and those pieces don't equal what you're giving up. Keith Tkachuk, of course, with the Blues. If you're a Blues fan, there you go. There's your tie between this video and what the Blues just did, because Keith Tkachuk was very visible during the Blues Stanley Cup run. And really, again, it just shows that identity they need. They just keep trading guys out and trading guys in. June 12th, 2002, the Coyotes acquire Brian Boucher and a 2002 third-round pick. The Flyers acquire Robert Esch and Michael Handzus. So Handzus doesn't last with the Coyotes for very long. Brian Boucher, of course, would go on to record a nice long shutout streak as a member of the Coyotes, which is kind of what he's known for his time there, and thus the reason it's on the board. Now we'll move over to 2003, which is over here. March 10th, 2003. It really turns into insane ramblings at this point, right? Now I got to try to make sense of it. The Coyotes acquire Chris Gratton, a 2004 fourth-round pick. And then the Buffalo Sabres, it shouldn't say Jets, it should say Buffalo Sabres. Daniel Briere and a third-round pick in 2004 that became Andre Sekera. So losing Briere hurts, and Chris Gratton was not enough. And anybody who saw that trade at the time had to be kind of scratching their heads just a little bit. August 11th, 2007, so we skip ahead 4 years. Radim Vrbata is acquired by the Coyotes. The Blackhawks acquire Kevin Adams. Vrbata had a pretty good run with Arizona more than once. And so that's the deal with Chicago, a team that they've traded with a few times recently. So now we skip over to here. See, if anybody else was looking at this board, be like, wait, Shannon, where does that go? Okay, no, we'll go over here first. June 21st, 2008, the Coyotes acquire pick number 46, Colby Roback. Pick number 76, Matthew Brodeur. The Predators acquire pick number 38, Roman Josi. So when you see those trades on the draft floor and you go, why'd they do that? This is why. The Nashville Predators move up in the draft. The Coyotes add a draft pick, which is what people say, oh, well, good, they added a draft pick and they only traded down a little bit. Yeah, Roman Josi's been pretty good. The Coyotes would have been better off to keep the pick and draft Roman Josi. December 7th, 2011, the Coyotes acquire David Rundblad and a 2012 second-round pick. The Senators acquire Kyle Turris. David Rundblad, his rights changed hands a few times. There was promise there, and he'd been a first-round pick. He never realized that promise. He was one of those guys that you went, gee, under the right circumstances, maybe, and then it just didn't work. Just didn't happen. Now we'll skip over here. June 23rd, 2017, so just 2 years ago, the Coyotes acquire Antti Ranta and Derek Stepan. The Rangers acquire Anthony DeAngelo and a first-round pick. So you can look at this and say giving up a first-round pick is tough, but they needed a goalie. Ranta was pretty fantastic for the Coyotes. Derek Stepan's been solid for them. However, giving up a first-round pick, right? June 15th, 2018, so we're only a year ago now. Alex Galchenyuk for Max Domi. So Max Domi becomes a member of the Coyotes, like his dad was with the Jets. And much like with the Jets, Max Domi doesn't last a whole lot of time with the Coyotes. He ends up going to Montreal in a deal that at the time we said, well, gee, Galchenyuk's going to be a 30-goal scorer again. And Domi only had like 8 goals, and all of them were empty netters. At least that's how it was portrayed. And that trade ends up backfiring. So, November 25th of 2018, the Coyotes, sensing they might be close to something, they pick up Nick Schmaltz from Chicago for 2 underperforming forwards in Dylan Strome and Brendan Perlini. A move that at the time looked great for Arizona. And I still think this trade will end up being around even. I think Schmaltz, as long as he's healthy and he can live up to that contract, they're in pretty good shape. That is saying something, though. But Dylan Strome, of course, gets reunited with DeBrincat, and things turn amazing for him there. And, of course, a trade that was made about a week ago now. June 29th of 2019, the Coyotes acquire Phil Kessel, Dane Burks, and a 2021 fourth-round pick. The Penguins acquire Alex Galchenyuk and Pierre-Olivier Joseph. And we're going to find out in the next year or two whether or not that trade works. The biggest problem this team has had, making the playoffs. Having an identity. So when we talk about instability and how fans don't come out and watch them, they've been out of the first round once in over 2 decades. They've had no success. They need that, and they need it now. There are teams I'm going to look at previews or look at their histories, and I'm going to say, this team's probably going to fall back. This team's holding pattern. Arizona can't afford that. They need to get over the hump. This whole board tells you there's been a lot of stuck in the middle towards the bottom of the league, and this is a team that needs more success than that. You show me an empty arena, I'll show you a team that probably isn't very good. And that runs for them and for the Hurricanes. We'll get to them as well. But it is hard to get excited about a team that hasn't made the playoffs since 7 years. It's tough. And even then, the Coyotes, towards the end of this past season, when they were close, the fans started showing up again. It's just the way it works. Not every market is like an Original Six market where, you can put a bad team on the ice and people will still come out. But anyways, there you go. The history of the Arizona Coyotes with a mix of the original Winnipeg Jets for good measure as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yeah, I could get green screens and do all this as graphics. I actually enjoy writing it on the board as madness, and I find it's easier for me to remember than if I don't have it written on the board, if I haven't handwritten up here. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.